You do not need more time. You need a decision. 6 months from now, your life can look completely different, or exactly the same. The difference will not be luck. It will not be motivation. It will not be hope. It will be whether you finally decide that staying the same is no longer acceptable. Right now, you feel it. The frustration. The quiet disappointment. The sense that you are capable of more, yet somehow still stuck in the same patterns, the same habits, the same cycles. You wake up with intentions, but end the day with excuses. You promise change, then postpone it. You imagine a better version of yourself, then return to the comfort of the old one. That ends here. This is not entertainment. This is not background noise. This is a line in the sand. If you stay with me through this audiobook, you will confront the version of yourself that keeps you small, and you will begin building the version of yourself that commands respect, discipline, and power. 6 months is enough time to change your mindset. 6 months is enough time to rebuild your habits. 6 months is enough time to redefine your identity. 6 months is enough time to become someone you no longer recognize, in the best way possible. Time will pass anyway. The question is whether you will evolve with it or decay inside it. Right now, there are 2 versions of you. There is the current version, the one who hesitates, delays, overthinks, self-sabotages, seeks comfort, avoids discomfort, and settles for potential instead of execution. And there is the future version, the disciplined one, the focused one, the consistent one, the one who does not negotiate with weakness, the one who acts even when motivation disappears, the one who builds standards instead of excuses. 6 months from now, one of those versions will be real. You cannot drift into transformation. You cannot wish your way into power. You cannot think your way into discipline. You must choose it, and make it non-negotiable. If you continue the same habits, you will carry the same regret. If you keep the same mindset, you will repeat the same year. If you delay change again, you will look back and realize you wasted time you can never recover. Be honest with yourself. You already know what needs to change. You already feel the gap between who you are and who you should be. You already sense the cost of staying comfortable. So stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting for motivation. Stop waiting for confidence. Stop waiting for permission. This audiobook will challenge your identity. It will confront your excuses. It will expose your self-sabotage. It will demand responsibility. It will rebuild your self-trust. It will install discipline. It will force you to rise. Stay with me, not as a listener, but as someone who is ready to transform. Stay with me, because the next 6 months will pass whether you change or not. Stay with me, because this is the moment you decide who you become. If you commit fully, 6 months from now you will not recognize your old mindset. You will not tolerate your old habits. You will not accept your old limits. This is where the old version of you begins to lose control. This is where the disciplined version of you begins to take power. This is where your transformation begins. Chapter 1. Decide that change is non-negotiable. You will not change by accident. You will not evolve by hoping. You will not transform by waiting. If you want the next 6 months to redefine your life, you must start with one uncompromising decision. You are done negotiating with your potential. Most people fail because they treat change like a preference instead of a command. They say they want growth, but they still protect comfort. They claim they want discipline, but they still tolerate excuses. They talk about becoming better, but they keep choosing the habits that keep them small. Be honest with yourself. You say you want more confidence, yet you avoid action. You say you want success, yet you procrastinate. You say you want control, yet you let your impulses decide your behavior. That is not a lack of ability. That is a lack of decision. You already know when you are lying to yourself. You already recognize when you delay what you should confront. You already feel the gap between who you are and who you could become. Deep down, you know this. Your biggest problem is not time. It is hesitation. It is inconsistency. It is allowing weakness to negotiate with your future. Every day, self-sabotage shows up quietly. You postpone difficult tasks. You wait for motivation before acting. You break promises to yourself. You choose distraction instead of discipline. You choose comfort instead of growth. The emotional cost of this is heavy. You feel frustration because you know you could do more. You feel guilt because you keep falling short of your own standards. You feel stuck because you repeat the same cycles. And the longer you stay in this pattern, the harder it becomes to trust yourself. If nothing changes, here is what happens. 6 months will pass, but you will remain the same. A year will pass, but your habits will remain unchanged. 5 years will pass, and you will wonder why your potential never became reality. Regret will build quietly. Confidence will erode. Opportunities will disappear. And you will carry the weight of knowing you chose comfort over progress. This is where the shift must happen. You are not a victim of your circumstances. You are not trapped by your past. You are not powerless against your habits. You decide. You choose. You build. You control. Change begins when you stop asking if and start declaring this is happening. You do not wait until you feel ready. You do not wait until conditions are perfect. You do not wait until motivation arrives. You decide that transformation is required, not optional. Here is the truth you must accept. Your life will only change when your standards change. Not your wishes. Not your goals. Not your intentions. Your standards. A standard is not what you say you want. A standard is what you refuse to tolerate. If you tolerate procrastination, you are choosing stagnation. If you tolerate laziness, you are choosing mediocrity. If you tolerate excuses, you are choosing regret. So the decision you must make today is simple, but powerful. You no longer negotiate with weakness. One rule to adopt starting now. If it supports your growth, you do it. If it supports your old self, you reject it. One behavior shift to commit to. Stop delaying what moves your life forward. Act immediately. One discipline practice to install. Keep your word to yourself, especially when it is uncomfortable. One mindset adjustment to internalize. You are no longer someone who tries. You are someone who decides. You are not here to experiment with change. You are here to commit to it. From this moment forward, your identity begins to shift. You are becoming someone who does not beg for motivation. You are becoming someone who moves even when it is difficult. You are becoming someone who treats growth as a responsibility, not a wish. The stronger version of you is being built with every decisive action. The disciplined identity you want begins with the promises you keep to yourself. The new standard of your life starts with the decision you make today. You are no longer waiting. You are no longer hesitating. You are no longer negotiating with fear. You have decided. This is where change begins. This is where your transformation becomes real. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 2. Take full responsibility without excuses. If you want real transformation, you must remove the most dangerous habit in your life: blaming. Blaming your past. Blaming your environment. Blaming your circumstances. Blaming other people. Blaming timing. Blaming motivation. As long as you blame something outside yourself, you give away your power. Be honest with yourself. You already know when you make excuses. You already know when you soften the truth. You already know when you justify behavior that is holding you back. You say things like, "It's not the right time. That's just how I am. I would change if things were different. I'm trying." But deep down, you know the truth. Trying is not the problem. Effort is not the problem. Your problem is partial ownership. Every day, this shows up in subtle ways. You blame fatigue instead of building discipline. You blame stress instead of improving structure. You blame your environment instead of controlling your choices. You blame lack of support instead of becoming self-led. And the emotional cost is heavy. You feel powerless. You feel dependent. You feel like life is happening to you instead of being built by you. That mindset keeps you small. That mindset keeps you reactive. That mindset keeps you trapped. Deep down, you already know this. No one is coming to save you. No one is responsible for your growth except you. No one owes you the life you want. Be honest. You already know where you could do better. You already know where you avoid responsibility. You already know where you settle instead of stepping up. If nothing changes, here's what happens next. You stay stuck in the same mental loop. You repeat the same habits. You carry the same frustrations year after year. Time moves forward, but your identity does not. You will look back and realize you spent years explaining why change was hard instead of proving that it was possible. Regret will grow. Self-trust will weaken. Confidence will erode. Not because you were incapable, but because you refuse to fully own your power. This is where the shift must happen. You are not a victim. You are not powerless. You are not trapped. You decide. You choose. You build. You control. Your results are not caused by luck. Your habits create your reality. Your choices shape your future. Your standards determine your outcomes. When you say, "This is my responsibility," you reclaim control. Responsibility is not a burden. Responsibility is freedom. Because once you accept full ownership, you also gain full power to change. Here is the identity upgrade you must embrace. You are no longer someone who explains. You are someone who executes. You are no longer someone who waits for conditions. You are someone who creates conditions. You are no longer someone who reacts to life. You are someone who directs life. One rule to adopt starting now. If something in your life is not improving, assume it is your responsibility to fix it. One behavior shift to commit to. Stop explaining your situation. Start correcting it. One discipline practice to install. At the end of every day, ask yourself, what did I do today to move my life forward? One mindset adjustment to internalize. You do not need permission to improve. You only need ownership. You do not deny reality, you confront it. You do not avoid truth, you face it. You do not defend your weaknesses, you correct them. You are becoming someone who takes responsibility without resentment. You are becoming someone who leads their own life. You are becoming someone who does not wait to be rescued. The stronger version of you does not complain. The stronger version of you does not blame. The stronger version of you does not explain away failure. The disciplined identity forming within you takes full ownership, even when it is uncomfortable. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" You start declaring, "What am I going to do about this?" You stop looking for excuses. You start building solutions. You stop giving away your power. You start reclaiming it. This is where you take control. This is where you rebuild self-respect. This is where you step into personal authority. This is where change accelerates. This is how you reclaim power. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 3. Destroy the old version of you. You cannot become someone new while protecting who you used to be. Transformation does not happen by adding comfort. It happens by removing what no longer serves you. If you want the next 6 months to change everything, you must be willing to let the old version of you die. Not slowly. Not emotionally. Not nostalgically. Decisively. Right now, you are carrying habits that sabotage your growth. Patterns that keep you small. Behaviors that reinforce the identity you claim you want to outgrow. Be honest with yourself. You already know which habits weaken you. You already know which routines drain your potential. You already know which behaviors contradict the future you want. Yet you still protect them. You scroll when you should act. You delay when you should execute. You repeat comfort when you should embrace discipline. You return to the same distractions, the same excuses, the same self-betrayals. This is how self-sabotage hides, not in dramatic failure, but in daily decisions. The emotional cost is deeper than you admit. You feel disappointed in yourself. You feel frustrated by your lack of progress. You feel disconnected from your potential. Every time you repeat an old habit, you reinforce the identity you claim you want to escape. Deep down, you already know this truth. Your current identity is built from repeated behaviors. If you keep the behaviors, you keep the identity. And if nothing changes, here is what happens. 6 months from now, you will still be negotiating with the same weaknesses. A year from now, you will still be fighting the same habits. Years from now, you will still wonder why change felt impossible. Your confidence will weaken. Your self-trust will erode. Your belief in your own ability to transform will fade. Not because you lacked potential, but because you refused to let go of who you used to be. This is where the power shift happens. You are not required to stay loyal to your past. You are not obligated to maintain outdated habits. You are not meant to preserve an identity that limits you. You decide who stays. You choose what ends. You control what continues. You build who comes next. This is not about becoming better. This is about becoming different. You stop saying, "This is just how I am." You start declaring, "This is no longer who I allow myself to be." Here is the shift you must make. You do not manage your weaknesses. You eliminate them. You do not negotiate with self-sabotage. You shut it down. You do not tolerate routines that destroy your future. You replace them. One rule to adopt starting now. If a habit supports your old identity, it must be removed. One behavior shift to commit to. Interrupt destructive routines the moment you recognize them. One discipline practice to install. Each day, identify one habit you are actively dismantling, and replace it with one habit that builds your future. One mindset adjustment to internalize. You are not improving your old self. You are replacing it. This is where identity separates from behavior. Your habits do not define your destiny, unless you keep them. Your past does not control your future, unless you protect it. You are becoming someone who does not cling to outdated versions of themselves. You are becoming someone who chooses growth over nostalgia. You are becoming someone who removes what weakens them, without hesitation. The stronger version of you is ruthless with what holds you back. The disciplined version of you does not romanticize old comfort. The new standard you are building does not allow destructive routines to survive. You stop saying, "I'll change eventually." You start declaring, "That version of me is over." You stop returning to old cycles. You start enforcing new standards. You stop protecting habits that limit you. You start building habits that elevate you. This is where the separation happens. This is where the old identity loses influence. This is where the new identity begins to take control. This is how you rebuild yourself. This is where the old version of you ends. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 4. Design the person you are becoming. You cannot build a new life without a clear blueprint. Chaos creates confusion. Confusion creates hesitation. Hesitation creates stagnation. If you do not design your future, you will default to your past. Most people live without intention. They wake up, react, survive, repeat. They move through days without direction. They drift through weeks without structure. They exist without a defined identity. Be honest with yourself. You already feel the lack of clarity. You already sense the internal confusion. You already know what it feels like to want more, without knowing how to build it. This shows up daily. You make decisions without long-term thinking. You follow impulses instead of vision. You choose convenience over alignment. You react instead of directing your life. The emotional cost is silent but heavy. You feel scattered. You feel unfocused. You feel disconnected from purpose. Without vision, discipline feels pointless. Without direction, effort feels exhausting. Without clarity, progress feels random. Deep down, you already know this. You cannot become what you have not defined. If nothing changes, here is what happens. You keep drifting. You keep reacting. You keep repeating cycles. You keep building a life you did not consciously choose. Time will move forward, but your direction will remain unclear. Your energy will be spent, but your progress will be minimal. Your effort will continue, but your results will be inconsistent. This is where the shift happens. You decide who you are becoming. You choose what you are building. You define your future. You design your identity. You stop drifting. You start directing. You stop reacting. You start constructing. You stop hoping. You start planning. This is not about vague goals. This is about identity architecture. Here is the core truth. You do not rise to goals. You fall to identity. So you must design the identity first. Not just what you want. Not just what you desire. But who you are becoming. Who are you in 6 months? How do you think? How do you act? How do you speak to yourself? How do you treat your body? How do you use your time? How do you handle pressure? How do you respond to discomfort? How do you operate when no one is watching? This is the blueprint. One rule to adopt starting now. No action without intention. No habit without purpose. One behavior shift to commit to. Start making decisions based on who you are becoming, not who you have been. One discipline practice to install. Daily visualization of your future identity, not outcomes, but character and standards. One mindset adjustment to internalize. You are not chasing a future, you are constructing an identity. Clarity eliminates confusion. Structure eliminates chaos. Vision eliminates drift. You are becoming someone who moves with direction. You are becoming someone who acts with purpose. You are becoming someone who builds with intention. The stronger version of you does not wander through life. The disciplined version of you does not guess their next move. The new standard you are building is guided by clarity, not impulse. You stop asking, "What do I feel like doing?" You start asking, "What does my future self require?" You stop choosing convenience. You start choosing alignment. You stop living randomly. You start living deliberately. This is where confusion dies. This is where direction begins. This is where identity takes form. This is how you design your future. This is how you build clarity. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 5. Choose discipline over motivation. If you wait to feel ready, you will stay exactly where you are. Motivation is unreliable. Emotion is unstable. Inspiration fades. Discipline is what remains when motivation disappears. Most people fail not because they lack potential, but because they depend on feelings instead of standards. Be honest with yourself. You already know how often motivation rises, and how quickly it fades. You already know how many plans you abandoned because you didn't feel like it. You already know how many goals you delayed because the energy wasn't there. This shows up every day. You start strong, then slow down. You commit mentally, then quit emotionally. You promise progress, then retreat into comfort. The emotional cost is heavy. You feel inconsistent. You feel unreliable. You feel disappointed in yourself. And the longer you depend on motivation, the harder it becomes to trust your own word. Deep down, you already know this. If your effort depends on how you feel, your results will always be unstable. If nothing changes, here is what happens. You continue starting and stopping. You continue feeling excited, then quitting. You continue building momentum, then losing it. Time will pass, but your progress will reset repeatedly. Your confidence will weaken. Your discipline will remain undeveloped. Your identity will stay tied to impulse instead of control. This is where the power shift happens. You stop asking, "Do I feel like it?" You start declaring, "This is required." You decide. You commit. You execute. You persist. Discipline is not punishment. Discipline is self-respect. It means you keep your word, even when your emotions resist. Here is the identity shift you must embrace. You are no longer someone who waits for motivation. You are someone who moves because it is necessary. You do not rely on excitement. You rely on standards. You do not act when it is easy. You act because it is expected of you. One rule to adopt starting now. If a task supports your growth, you do it, regardless of how you feel. One behavior shift to commit to. Stop negotiating with resistance. Start executing through it. One discipline practice to install. Create one daily non-negotiable task that you complete no matter your mood. One mindset adjustment to internalize. Your feelings do not control your actions. Your standards do. This is how discipline is built. Not through dramatic effort, but through consistent obedience to your own rules. You show up when it is inconvenient. You execute when it is uncomfortable. You persist when motivation disappears. You become someone who does not collapse under resistance. You become someone who acts without emotional permission. You become someone who treats progress as a responsibility, not a desire. The stronger version of you does not wait for energy. The disciplined version of you does not negotiate with laziness. The new standard you are building does not allow emotion to dictate effort. You stop saying, "I'll do it when I feel like it." You start declaring, "I do it because it is who I am." You stop letting motivation control your momentum. You start letting discipline control your direction. You stop being inconsistent. You start becoming dependable to yourself. This is where discipline becomes identity. This is where structure replaces impulse. This is where your life becomes predictable in the best way. This is how you build consistency. This is how you strengthen self-trust. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 6. Control the first hour of your day. How you start your day determines who you become. Your mornings shape your mindset. Your mornings set your discipline tone. Your mornings define your momentum. If you begin the day in chaos, you live in chaos. If you begin the day in control, you build control. Most people wake up reactive. They check their phone. They consume noise. They absorb distraction. They allow external inputs to hijack their focus. Be honest with yourself. You already know how often your day starts in disorder. You already feel how quickly your focus dissolves. You already experience the mental fog, the distraction, the scattered energy. This shows up daily. You begin the day consuming instead of creating. You react instead of directing. You follow impulses instead of structure. You surrender control before the day even starts. The emotional cost is invisible but powerful. You feel behind before you begin. You feel rushed without direction. You feel mentally scattered before any real work starts. Deep down, you already know this. If you lose the morning, you lose the day. If nothing changes, here is what happens. Your days remain reactive. Your focus remains fractured. Your energy remains inconsistent. Your discipline remains fragile. Time will pass, but your structure will not improve. Your productivity will feel forced. Your momentum will feel unstable. Your confidence will stay dependent on circumstances. This is where the power shift happens. You decide how your day begins. You choose what enters your mind. You control your environment. You direct your energy. The first hour of your day must become sacred. Not chaotic. Not distracted. Not reactive. Structured. Intentional. Disciplined. Here is the identity shift you must embrace. You are no longer someone who wakes up and drifts. You are someone who wakes up and commands the day. You do not surrender your mind to noise. You protect your focus. You do not allow distraction to lead. You lead your attention. One rule to adopt starting now: no consumption before creation. No distraction before discipline. One behavior shift to commit to: remove phone-based stimulation from the first hour of your day. One discipline practice to install: build a simple, repeatable morning structure you follow without thinking. One mindset adjustment to internalize: your day does not happen to you, you initiate it. This is how dominance is built: quietly, consistently, daily. You wake up with intention. You move with structure. You begin with purpose. You start in control. You become someone who protects their mental environment. You become someone who guards their attention. You become someone who treats mornings as identity training. The stronger version of you does not scroll into the day. The disciplined version of you does not surrender focus. The new standard you are building does not allow chaos at the start of your day. You stop waking up and reacting. You start waking up and directing. You stop giving your mind away. You start controlling your attention. You stop letting noise shape your thoughts. You start shaping your thoughts intentionally. This is where structure becomes identity. This is where control becomes natural. This is where discipline becomes automatic. This is how you win the day. This is how you build momentum. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 7. Reclaim your focus and destroy distraction. Your attention is your most valuable asset. And right now, it is being stolen from you daily. Not violently. Not obviously. Not dramatically. Silently. Constantly. Systematically. Distraction has become your default state. You switch tasks without thinking. You check your phone without awareness. You consume noise without intention. You chase stimulation without control. Be honest with yourself. You already feel the mental fragmentation. You already experience the short attention span. You already struggle to stay focused. You already know how difficult it feels to sit in silence and work. This shows up every day. You avoid deep work. You escape discomfort through stimulation. You replace effort with entertainment. You trade growth for instant relief. The emotional cost is serious. You feel mentally weak. You feel overstimulated. You feel unfocused. You feel scattered. And the more distracted you become, the harder it is to build discipline. Deep down, you already know this. A distracted mind cannot build a powerful life. If nothing changes, here is what happens. Your focus continues to weaken. Your attention span continues to shrink. Your ability to concentrate continues to deteriorate. Time passes, but your depth disappears. You become mentally reactive. You become emotionally dependent on stimulation. You become unable to sit with discomfort. Your life becomes shallow, not because of lack of opportunity, but because of lack of focus. This is where the shift happens. You decide what deserves your attention. You choose what you consume. You control your mental inputs. You build your focus. Focus is not talent. Focus is training. Distraction is not accidental. It is conditioned. You must rewire your relationship with stimulation. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who reacts to impulses. You are someone who controls attention. You are no longer addicted to stimulation. You are disciplined with input. You are no longer controlled by dopamine. You are directed by intention. One rule to adopt starting now. If it fragments your focus, it does not belong in your daily life. One behavior shift to commit to. Create distraction-free zones in your day. One discipline practice to install. Train sustained focus daily, even when it feels uncomfortable. One mindset adjustment to internalize. Focus is a skill you build, not a trait you are born with. This is how you rebuild your mind. You sit in silence without escaping. You stay with discomfort without numbing. You work without stimulation. You concentrate without interruption. You become someone who can hold attention. You become someone who can go deep. You become someone who can build without distraction. The stronger version of you is not mentally scattered. The disciplined version of you is not overstimulated. The new standard you are building does not allow compulsive distraction. You stop chasing stimulation. You start building concentration. You stop feeding impulse. You start feeding discipline. You stop consuming constantly. You start creating deliberately. This is where mental power returns. This is where focus becomes strength. This is where attention becomes authority. This is how you reclaim control. This is how you rebuild your mind. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 8. Upgrade your circle or stay the same. You do not grow in isolation. And you do not rise in a stagnant environment. Whether you admit it or not, your environment is shaping you. Your habits. Your standards. Your mindset. Your confidence. Your ambition. If you surround yourself with limitation, you will think small. If you surround yourself with excuses, you will tolerate weakness. If you surround yourself with comfort, you will resist growth. Be honest with yourself. You already feel when certain people drain your energy. You already sense when conversations pull you backward. You already know which environments weaken your discipline. This shows up every day. You lower your standards to fit in. You tolerate negativity to avoid discomfort. You shrink your ambition to avoid judgment. You stay connected to people who reinforce your old identity. The emotional cost is silent but destructive. You feel held back. You feel misunderstood. You feel less driven than you could be. You feel pressure to remain the version of yourself others expect. Deep down, you already know this. You cannot become a new version of yourself while staying loyal to an old environment. If nothing changes, here is what happens. Your growth slows. Your ambition weakens. Your discipline becomes fragile. Your identity remains tied to people who benefit from you staying the same. Time passes, but your environment continues shaping your limitations. You will look back and realize you stayed loyal to comfort instead of loyal to your potential. This is where the power shift happens. You choose who influences you. You decide what energy you allow around you. You control what environments shape your identity. You build your social standards. This is not about abandoning people. This is about protecting your growth. You stop prioritizing familiarity. You start prioritizing alignment. You stop tolerating influence that weakens you. You start seeking influence that strengthens you. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone shaped by your environment. You are someone who shapes your environment. You do not absorb energy blindly. You filter influence intentionally. You do not allow others to define your standards. You define them yourself. One rule to adopt starting now. If a person or environment weakens your discipline, you limit its influence. One behavior shift to commit to. Reduce time spent around people who normalize excuses and increase time around growth-minded influence. One discipline practice to install. Regularly audit who and what shapes your mindset. One mindset adjustment to internalize. You rise or fall to the level of what you repeatedly allow around you. This is how identity upgrades. You protect your energy. You guard your ambition. You reinforce your standards. You become someone who does not allow their future to be negotiated by their environment. You become someone who chooses growth over familiarity. You become someone who values evolution over comfort. The stronger version of you does not stay in environments that limit expansion. The disciplined version of you does not tolerate influence that weakens resolve. The new standard you are building does not allow stagnation to shape identity. You stop asking, "Who accepts me as I am?" You start asking, "Who pushes me to become better?" You stop staying where you are comfortable. You start moving where you are challenged. You stop shrinking to fit your surroundings. You start expanding beyond them. This is where your environment aligns with your future. This is where influence becomes intentional. This is where identity strengthens through proximity. This is how you elevate your standards. This is how you protect your growth. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 9. Rebuild the way you see yourself. Your life will never rise higher than your self-image. You do not act based on your potential. You act based on who you believe you are. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you behave inconsistently. If you see yourself as weak, you hesitate. If you see yourself as incapable, you hold back. Your self-image is silently controlling your behavior. Be honest with yourself. You already know when your inner voice doubts you. You already recognize the self-talk that limits you. You already feel the hesitation that comes from not fully trusting yourself. This shows up every day. You second-guess your decisions. You shrink your goals to match your confidence. You hesitate when you should act. You hold back because you fear failing or looking incapable. The emotional cost is deep. You feel smaller than your potential. You feel frustrated by your lack of boldness. You feel disconnected from your power. And every time you hesitate, you reinforce the identity you want to outgrow. Deep down, you already know this. You will never outperform the identity you accept. If nothing changes, here is what happens. You continue doubting yourself. You continue hesitating. You continue holding back from opportunities. You continue reinforcing a version of yourself built on insecurity. Time will pass, but your confidence will not grow. Your capability will remain underused. Your potential will stay trapped behind self-doubt. This is where the power shift happens. You decide how you see yourself. You choose the identity you reinforce. You control the story you repeat in your mind. You build confidence through action. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you prove to yourself. You stop asking, "Am I good enough?" You start declaring, "I will act like someone who is." Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone controlled by old self-beliefs. You are someone who rewrites their identity deliberately. You do not accept limiting narratives. You replace them. You do not wait to feel confident. You build confidence through execution. One rule to adopt starting now. Never speak about yourself in a way that weakens your identity. One behavior shift to commit to. Act daily in ways that align with the confident version of you, even if it feels uncomfortable. One discipline practice to install. Track daily actions that prove you are becoming stronger, more disciplined, and more capable. One mindset adjustment to internalize. You become what you repeatedly reinforce about yourself. This is how self-image transforms. You stop replaying old insecurities. You start installing new self-beliefs. You stop defining yourself by past failures. You start defining yourself by present action. You stop waiting to feel powerful. You start behaving like someone who is powerful. You become someone who trusts their ability to handle pressure. You become someone who respects their own standards. You become someone who moves with certainty, not because fear disappears, but because identity grows stronger than fear. The stronger version of you does not shrink under doubt. The disciplined version of you does not negotiate with insecurity. The new standard you are building does not allow negative self-perception to dominate your behavior. You stop saying, "That's not who I am." You start declaring, "That is who I am becoming." You stop letting your past define your confidence. You start letting your discipline define your identity. You stop waiting to feel ready. You start acting like someone who is already becoming powerful. This is where identity takes control. This is where confidence becomes consistent. This is where self-trust strengthens through action. This is how you rewrite your self-image. This is how you rebuild your confidence. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 10. Use your body to reinforce your power. Your body is not separate from your mindset. Your physical state shapes your confidence. Your energy shapes your discipline. Your posture shapes your identity. If your body feels weak, your mind often follows. If your body feels neglected, your standards begin to erode. If your physical habits are undisciplined, your mental habits soon mirror them. Be honest with yourself. You already know when your energy feels low. You already feel when your physical state affects your motivation. You already notice how confidence shifts when you feel strong versus when you feel sluggish. This shows up every day. You avoid physical effort. You choose comfort over movement. You ignore your health until it affects your productivity. You underestimate how much your physical discipline shapes your mental strength. The emotional cost is subtle but serious. You feel less powerful. You feel less energized. You feel less confident in your presence. You feel less in control of your habits. Deep down, you already know this. When you neglect your body, you weaken your identity. If nothing changes, here is what happens. Your energy remains inconsistent. Your confidence remains fragile. Your discipline remains incomplete. Your self-image stays limited. Time passes, but your vitality does not improve. Your potential stays underpowered. Your mental resilience stays underdeveloped. This is where the power shift happens. You choose how strong you become. You decide how much energy you cultivate. You control how disciplined your body becomes. You build confidence through physical action. Physical discipline is not about appearance. It is about identity reinforcement. Every time you train your body, you teach your mind. I keep my word. I do hard things. I do not quit. I respect myself. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who avoids physical challenge. You are someone who embraces physical discipline. You do not see exercise as punishment. You see it as proof of character. You do not wait to feel energized. You build energy through movement. One rule to adopt starting now. Move your body daily, no exceptions. One behavior shift to commit to. Replace one comfort habit with one physically demanding habit. One discipline practice to install. Train even when you do not feel like it, especially then. One mindset adjustment to internalize. A disciplined body builds a disciplined mind. This is how physical transformation accelerates mental change. You push through resistance. You build stamina through effort. You develop resilience through repetition. You condition yourself to persist. You become someone who feels strong in their own presence. You become someone who carries themselves with confidence. You become someone who trusts their ability to endure discomfort. The stronger version of you does not avoid effort. The disciplined version of you does not negotiate with physical laziness. The new standard you are building does not allow weakness to dominate your routine. You stop saying, "I'll start when I feel ready." You start declaring, "I train because this is who I am." You stop allowing your body to weaken your mindset. You start using your body to reinforce your identity. You stop underestimating the power of physical discipline. You start treating it as a foundation of mental strength. This is where your energy rises. This is where your confidence strengthens. This is where your discipline becomes embodied. This is how you strengthen your mind through your body. This is how you build unshakable energy. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 11. Increase your value before you chase money. Money follows value. Income follows usefulness. Opportunity follows competence. If you want financial change, you must stop chasing money and start building value. Be honest with yourself. You already feel the pressure around finances. You already sense the instability. You already know that wishing for more income has not changed your situation. This shows up daily. You think about money without changing your skills. You desire financial freedom without building leverage. You hope for better income without increasing your value. The emotional cost is heavy. You feel financial anxiety. You feel limitation. You feel dependence. You feel trapped by lack of options. Deep down, you already know this. Your income will not grow until you do. If nothing changes, here is what happens. You remain financially dependent. You remain limited by your current skill set. You remain controlled by circumstances. You remain vulnerable to instability. Time passes, but your value does not increase. Your income stays restricted. Your options remain narrow. This is where the power shift happens. You decide to grow your value. You choose to build skills. You invest in competence. You create leverage. You stop seeing money as the goal. You start seeing value as the foundation. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who waits for opportunity. You are someone who becomes valuable enough to attract it. You do not chase income. You build ability. You do not depend on luck. You depend on skill. One rule to adopt starting now: no income goal without a value-building plan. One behavior shift to commit to: daily skill investment, even when it feels slow. One discipline practice to install: allocate time every day to learning and execution. One mindset adjustment to internalize: your value determines your leverage. This is how financial identity is built. You become competent. You become useful. You become reliable. You become in demand. You stop seeing yourself as replaceable. You start building uniqueness. You stop being dependent on a single path. You start creating multiple options. The stronger version of you does not chase money. The disciplined version of you builds value. The new standard you are building focuses on growth, not shortcuts. You stop asking, "How do I make more money?" You start asking, "How do I become more valuable?" You stop waiting for opportunity. You start becoming opportunity. You stop living in financial fear. You start building financial control. This is where stability is built. This is where independence begins. This is where leverage forms. This is how you reset your financial identity. This is how you build real security. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 12. Choose discomfort over regret. Growth will never feel comfortable. If you are waiting for transformation to feel safe, easy, or convenient, you are waiting for something that does not exist. Discomfort is not a sign that you are failing. Discomfort is a sign that you are expanding. But most people are addicted to comfort. They avoid hard conversations. They avoid difficult tasks. They avoid emotional exposure. They avoid risk. They avoid pressure. Be honest with yourself. You already know where you choose comfort. You already recognize when you escape difficulty. You already feel the hesitation when something challenges you. This shows up daily. You delay uncomfortable action. You distract yourself when effort becomes heavy. You withdraw when fear appears. You rationalize inaction to avoid pressure. The emotional cost is quiet but destructive. You feel stuck. You feel smaller than your potential. You feel disappointed in your lack of courage. And every time you avoid discomfort, you reinforce weakness. Deep down, you already know this. Everything you want requires something uncomfortable. If nothing changes, here is what happens. You stay inside the same limits. You repeat the same routines. You maintain the same emotional tolerance. You remain fragile under pressure. Time passes, but your courage does not increase. Your confidence remains conditional. Your growth remains limited. Your resilience remains underdeveloped. And eventually, regret becomes more painful than discomfort ever was. This is where the power shift happens. You decide to lean into discomfort. You choose growth over safety. You build tolerance for pressure. You train your mind to endure. Discomfort is not your enemy. Comfort addiction is. You must rewire how you interpret difficulty. Instead of thinking, "This feels hard, I should stop," you start declaring, "This feels hard, I am growing." Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who avoids pressure. You are someone who seeks controlled challenge. You do not retreat from fear. You confront it deliberately. You do not collapse under resistance. You strengthen through it. One rule to adopt starting now: do one uncomfortable thing every single day. One behavior shift to commit to: move toward what you fear instead of away from it. One discipline practice to install: when you feel resistance, pause, and act anyway. One mindset adjustment to internalize: discomfort is the price of transformation. This is how mental toughness is built. Not through dramatic moments, but through daily voluntary discomfort. You speak when it feels intimidating. You act when it feels uncertain. You persist when it feels exhausting. You continue when quitting feels easier. You become someone who does not break under pressure. You become someone who builds resilience intentionally. You become someone who is emotionally stable in discomfort. The stronger version of you does not seek the easy route. The disciplined version of you does not negotiate with fear. The new standard you are building does not allow comfort to dictate your potential. You stop asking, "How can I avoid this?" You start asking, "How can this strengthen me?" You stop running from discomfort. You start training inside it. You stop protecting yourself from growth. You start demanding growth from yourself. This is where fragility disappears. This is where resilience is formed. This is where courage becomes identity. This is how you build mental toughness. This is how you break comfort addiction. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 13. Track what you build or stay the same. You cannot improve what you refuse to measure. Effort without tracking feels productive. But effort without tracking often hides stagnation. If you want the next 6 months to truly change everything, you must remove one dangerous habit: self-deception. Most people overestimate their discipline. They overestimate their focus. They overestimate their effort. Because they never measure it. Be honest with yourself. You already know when you convince yourself you're doing enough. You already know when you avoid reviewing your performance. You already know when you stay busy instead of effective. This shows up daily. You complete tasks without evaluating results. You move through weeks without reviewing progress. You assume growth instead of proving it. You rely on memory instead of data. The emotional cost is subtle but serious. You feel productive, but uncertain. You feel active, but unclear. You feel effort, but not acceleration. Deep down, you already know this. If you do not track your standards, they slowly decline. If nothing changes, here is what happens. Your discipline weakens gradually. Your habits drift slowly. Your focus slips quietly. Time passes, but your growth becomes inconsistent. You will look back and realize you were active, but not intentional. Busy, but not strategic. Trying, but not improving. This is where the power shift happens. You measure what matters. You audit your behavior. You adjust your strategy. You own your results. Tracking is not about perfection. Tracking is about awareness. Awareness creates correction. Correction creates momentum. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who hopes they are improving. You are someone who verifies progress. You do not guess your discipline level. You evaluate it. You do not assume you are focused. You measure your output. One rule to adopt starting now: what gets tracked gets transformed. One behavior shift to commit to: conduct a weekly audit of your habits, focus, physical effort, and discipline. One discipline practice to install: score yourself honestly, without excuses, without emotional softness. One mindset adjustment to internalize: tracking is self-respect, not self-criticism. This is how momentum compounds. You review your week without ego. You identify weaknesses without shame. You adjust your strategy without quitting. You refine instead of retreat. You become someone who does not drift. You become someone who corrects quickly. You become someone who maintains standards over time. The stronger version of you does not avoid accountability. The disciplined version of you does not fear measurement. The new standard you are building does not allow blind effort. You stop saying, "I think I'm improving." You start declaring, "Here is the proof." You stop hiding from data. You start using it to sharpen yourself. You stop relying on feelings to evaluate progress. You start relying on disciplined review. This is where growth accelerates. Because when you track your habits, you expose weaknesses. When you expose weaknesses, you can fix them. When you fix them consistently, transformation becomes inevitable. You are becoming someone who holds themselves accountable. You are becoming someone who corrects without collapsing. You are becoming someone who refuses to lie to themselves. This is how you avoid burnout, by adjusting intelligently. This is how you avoid stagnation, by reviewing consistently. This is how you maintain momentum, by measuring honestly. No ego. No denial. No excuses. Just evaluation. Correction. Improvement. This is where discipline becomes refined. This is where identity becomes stable. This is where transformation becomes measurable. This is how you stay accountable. This is how you sustain progress. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 14. Do not quit in the dip. This is the moment most people fail. Not at the beginning. Not when motivation is high. Not when the vision feels exciting. They fail in the dip. The dip is where progress slows. The dip is where results are not visible. The dip is where effort feels heavy and reward feels distant. You will experience it. The workouts will feel repetitive. The discipline will feel exhausting. The growth will feel invisible. The change will feel slower than you expected. Be honest with yourself. You already know how you react when progress stalls. You already recognize the voice that whispers, "Maybe this isn't working." You already feel the temptation to return to comfort when results delay. This shows up quietly. You reduce intensity. You skip one day. You loosen standards. You justify small compromises. Then small compromises become full relapse. The emotional cost is dangerous. You feel discouraged. You feel impatient. You feel doubtful. You feel tempted to abandon the process you once committed to. Deep down, you already know this. The dip is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are building. If nothing changes, if you quit in the dip, here is what happens. You return to your old habits. You reinforce the identity of someone who stops when it gets hard. You weaken your self-trust. You confirm your worst fear, that you cannot sustain growth. Time passes. The 6 months end. And you are left with the painful realization that you were closer to transformation than you realized, but you walked away. This is where the power shift happens. You decide that discomfort is not a signal to stop. You choose persistence over emotion. You control your response to stagnation. You build resilience through continuation. The dip is a test. It tests whether your decision was emotional or permanent. It tests whether your discipline is conditional or absolute. It tests whether your identity is weak or solid. Here is the identity shift. You are no longer someone who quits when excitement fades. You are someone who continues when results are invisible. You do not measure progress by emotion. You measure it by consistency. You do not panic when growth slows. You persist. One rule to adopt starting now: never make permanent decisions during temporary discomfort. One behavior shift to commit to: when you feel like quitting, reduce intensity if needed, but never stop completely. One discipline practice to install: track effort, not outcome. One mindset adjustment to internalize: the breakthrough often comes after the moment you want to quit. This is where resilience is forged. You keep showing up. You keep executing. You keep honoring your standards. You keep proving to yourself that you are not fragile. You become someone who understands that plateaus are part of progress. You become someone who does not interpret difficulty as failure. You become someone who expects resistance and overcomes it. The stronger version of you does not collapse in the dip. The disciplined version of you does not retreat when progress slows. The new standard you are building does not allow quitting to feel reasonable. You stop asking, "Why isn't this easier?" You start declaring, "This is where I prove who I am." You stop seeing the dip as punishment. You start seeing it as preparation. You stop doubting the process. You start deepening your commitment. Because here is the truth. The dip is the dividing line. On one side are people who start. On the other side are people who finish. On one side are those who talk about change. On the other side are those who embody it. This is the moment that defines your 6 months. Not when you feel strong. Not when you feel motivated. But when you feel tired, unseen, and tempted to return to who you used to be. This is where identity solidifies. You continue. You persist. You refuse to quit. And when you come out of the dip, and you will not just have results. You will have proof. Proof that you can endure. Proof that you can sustain effort. Proof that you are no longer controlled by temporary emotion. This is where breakthroughs are born. This is where resilience becomes identity. This is who you are becoming. Chapter 15. Become the standard you refuse to break. 6 months ago, you made a decision. Not a wish. Not a temporary burst of motivation. A decision. And now you stand here, not as the same person, but as someone rebuilt through discipline, ownership, discomfort, focus, and execution. The question now is not whether you changed. The question is whether you will protect what you built. Transformation is not an event. It is a standard. Most people treat growth like a phase. They push for a short period. They elevate briefly. Then they slowly return to comfort. Be honest with yourself. You already know how easy it would be to relax your standards. You already feel how tempting it is to loosen discipline. You already recognize how quickly the old version tries to reappear. This is the final confrontation. If you lower your standards now, you do not return to neutral. You decline. If you relax your discipline now, you do not maintain progress. You erode it. If you allow excuses now, you do not pause growth. You reverse it. Time will continue moving. The only question is whether your standards will move with it. 6 months passed whether you changed or not. The next 6 months will pass the same way. This is where full identity ownership takes over. You are not someone who went through a transformation. You are someone who became disciplined. You are not someone who completed a challenge. You are someone who built new standards. You are not someone who tried to improve. You are someone who decided who they are. You do not return to your old self, because that identity no longer fits. The hesitation no longer feels natural. The excuses no longer feel acceptable. The inconsistency no longer feels tolerable. You raised your standards. Now you protect them. One rule to adopt permanently: never lower your standards to match temporary comfort. One behavior shift to commit to long-term: when resistance appears, you lean into it, not away from it. One discipline practice to maintain: regular self-audits to ensure your actions align with your identity. One mindset adjustment to internalize forever: this is not something you did. This is who you are now. You are someone who acts without waiting for permission. You are someone who keeps promises to yourself. You are someone who builds structure instead of chaos. You are someone who controls attention. You are someone who embraces discomfort. You are someone who protects growth. You are someone who chooses responsibility over excuses. This is not temporary motivation. This is identity solidification. The stronger version of you is not fragile. The disciplined version of you is not emotional. The new standard you built is not negotiable. You do not fear hard work anymore. You do not fear discomfort anymore. You do not fear discipline anymore. You fear stagnation. You fear wasted potential. You fear becoming average. That fear keeps you sharp. Now imagine yourself 6 months from today, again. Standing taller. Thinking clearer. Acting faster. Executing consistently. Living deliberately. Not because you are chasing improvement, but because discipline is your baseline. This is not the end of transformation. This is the beginning of a new identity cycle. You no longer ask, "Can I change?" You declare, "I decide who I become." You no longer hope for better. You build better. You no longer wish for discipline. You embody it. 6 months ago, you drew a line. Today, you crossed it. And you will never go back. This is your new standard. This is your new identity. This is who you are. You have just completed something most people never do. You did not just listen. You confronted yourself. You challenged your identity. You raised your standards. Now the responsibility is yours. No one will enforce this discipline for you. No one will protect your standards for you. No one will execute for you. You choose. Every day. Again and again. 6 months will pass. The only question is this. When you arrive there, will you meet the same version of yourself, or someone unrecognizable in strength, focus, and discipline? If this audiobook challenged you, sharpened you, or shifted your mindset even slightly, then the next step is simple. Commit. Replay the chapters that confronted you. Apply one rule at a time. Raise one standard at a time. Build one disciplined action at a time. Transformation is not loud, it is daily. And now you know exactly what to do. The next 6 months are already moving. Decide who moves with them.